Joining us now is Rajeev Chandrasekhar, a petitioner in the case. He's been battling against Section 66 of the Information Technology Act. Rajeev, well, congratulations in order to you as well. I know it's been a long battle, an almost 7-year-long battle, and it's ironical that as a member of the Rajya Sabha, you actually had to move a PIL in the Supreme Court to try and get this anomaly, Section 66, corrected by the highest court in the land.
Yeah, it's one of those ironies, isn't it? I mean, you expect a member of parliament to actually get legislation amended and corrected in parliament, but I tried for many years. This issue was discussed, debated, I raised many questions, many interventions, but was faced with a political class that really just didn't want to budge from its position. And so, you know, like with most things in India now, it's the Supreme Court that steps in and does the right thing when the right thing requires to be done.
You know, but Rajeev, what does this speak of our lawmaking process? And this is just one example because, as you mentioned, there was no debate on this issue in Parliament. In fact, this bill was passed in 7 minutes flat. And look at what we're seeing happen with bill after bill. The land bill, which was passed by Parliament last year, we're now talking about amendments to that land bill. The Companies Act, which was in the making for almost a decade, then was passed in 2013. We're now talking about amending that. What does this say about the nature of lawmaking in this country?
No, I agree. I think for too long lawmaking has been transformed into legislate and spend versus legislate, debate, ideate and come up with a new law and then move on. I think there is a reason why the parliament is a house of debating. It is for different points of view to come together and to improve, expand, modify a law that is proposed by the government. But for too many years now, governments have gotten away with the view that they are the only ones who know what is right for the country, and they go out and legislate and then push it through with sheer, you know, for example, in the case of this 2008 legislation, it was pushed through. I went out to get a glass of water. I remember vividly standing outside the lobby of the Rajya Sabha for 2 minutes, and I walked back in and they said the bill had been passed. And I had actually prepared a debate, I had prepared to speak on the subject, and before you knew it, the bill was law. So I think there is really a larger story here, which is that Parliament and governments must know that there is a need to create consensus around legislation and laws.
You know, taking that point forward now, Rajeev, and let's talk about this law in specific, because a safe internet, you say, and a free internet can coexist, and you are now urging the government to move amendments to the Information Technology Act. What is the kind of amendments that you would like to see? And I also want to point out that while the court has struck down 66A, the court has upheld 79(3)B, and it's also upheld the government's right to be able to block access to certain websites under Rule 69A. So in this context, what are the kinds of amendments to ensure the checks and balances are in place?
Shireen, there has to be clearly two public policy objectives out of any IT amendment law or any new law. One is the policy, which I completely agree with, that there must be a way to regulate misuse of the internet. And there are many forms of misuse. We don't have to get into the forms of misuse, but there is a clear debate around the need to regulate misuse of the internet. But there is a need to balance whatever you do on the misuse of the internet with the right to express yourself freely on the internet. Number one. Number two, the laws on the internet space cannot be at odds with or contradictory or with a larger ambit than the laws in the normal criminal penal code. You can't criminalize people for doing things on cyberspace that they don't otherwise get criminalized in the normal world. So I think there is a need to harmonize these two worlds. The world has moved a lot since 2008. I think the act currently looks very dated and old. There is a need for the government to move forward and create something that is more contemporaneous. And this is actually even more important, Shireen, because this government is the one that talks a lot about digital India, and that is a clear focus.
So if you can give me specifics, Rajeev, if you can give me specifics in terms of the amendments that you would like to see this government move in order for us to be able to harmonize this.
No, look, I think it's very difficult to tell you all of the 100 specifics in terms of unlawful use of the internet. I mean, we all know child pornography, we know pornography, we know inciting and creating communal violence, we know defamation. But the point is that the laws and the criminal procedure for this in the IT space should be identical to laws that exist in the criminal penal code. You can't have these two things being not harmonized. And so it is really also about the process as much as what amendments I'd like to see. I'd like to see a process where we look at all of what exists in the normal criminal penal code and say how much of this already exists and what is it really that we need to legislate for that does not exist in the normal criminal code. There is no need to create laws for which laws already exist.
A quick question, Rajeev, because, in terms of the court actually upholding 79(3)(b) and 69(a), the view is that this will, in a sense, limit the liability of the intermediaries. But what about the responsibility of intermediaries? And we were having a very interesting conversation with Twitter, for instance, that's putting internal checks and balances to stop people from trolling and abuse and so on and so forth. So liability and responsibility, how do you view that?
No, I think what the Supreme Court has done is right, which is to say that the intermediaries can only be asked to offload stuff after a certain diligence. And this has two implications. One is that the government or any entity representing the government just can't ask intermediaries to offload content without passing some hurdle. The second is actually as important, which is the intermediaries don't start playing games with content providers that they are hosting or they are providing themselves as a platform for. So there is an obligation on the intermediary, yes, but this obligation now has been, by the Supreme Court's order, it has to pass a certain hurdle. And it is not just blind as opposed like a phone call from a strange 301 number in Delhi Sanchar Bhavan saying knock this off or knock that off. It can't be as ad hoc, and that is what really the Supreme Court order says.
Well, the government is talking about doing away with discretion in aspects related to natural resources. Maybe we'll see discretion coming down when it comes to take down requests as well. But Rajeev, this is a matter that maybe will be taken up when Parliament reconvenes. What is it that you would like this government to do, especially as you mentioned, Digital India is one of the big planks for this government?
Yeah, I think Digital India, if that has to be a reality, Shireen, and I've written about this and I've spoken about this in Parliament, so this is nothing new. I think there is a lot of things that the government has to alter, change, and have a fresh new approach, very different from what the UPA was doing. And at the heart of it is the IT Act. We clearly need a new contemporaneous act that talks about innovation, creativity, and really defines the government's role to be minimalistic. We talk about minimum government, it must represent itself in the new law. The government has to be an enabler and a regulator of misuse, but it cannot be big brother in cyberspace.
It cannot be big brother in cyberspace, but whether we're actually going to be able to achieve that or not on the back of what the Supreme Court has said today is the big question. But Rajeev Chandrasekhar, it's always a pleasure speaking. I hope it's not a 7-year wait, Rajeev.
No,
it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. While all of us were busy working, here's what Nentara was doing, taking pictures with legends from down under. That's her with Ricky Ponting. Nentara, can you stop blushing? I've never seen you with your eyes shut like that. But anyway, that's what she was doing while we were at work.
I also interviewed them. We'll have that on India.
Some of us have a life, some of us don't.
Thank you, Shireen, for letting me do this as well.
Yes, you better thank me because it was thanks to me that you got to meet Ricky Ponting.